So let's have a look now at what is actually recommended by policy and guidance as far as weight management is concerned. Okay, so this is an overview of the obesity care pathway, which has been around since 2013. And this is quite important for us to get a really good grasp of because it affects the types of people that we will see. So if you start from the bottom, Tier 1 is what we call universal prevention. So that's public health activities that are going on to change the environment, to promote health, to try and prevent more people becoming overweight or obese. Tier 2 is for people who are overweight or obese to have support, try and correct that, to take them back to what's perceived to be a healthy weight, or change their lifestyle. So that will include physical activity, behaviour change, and dietary change. But these are most likely the people without complex needs, without comorbidities. Tier 3 is the level that we are most likely to see as dietitians. So it's those who with severe obesity, level 2 and 3, 4, but may have other needs such as type 2 diabetes, hypercholesterolemia, those kinds of things that tend to occur with severe obesity. So that's going to be a multidisciplinary intervention. So ideally there will be psychology, there may be dietetics, but it's that greater depth because it's got to be able to deal with the comorbidities as well as the just simple physical activity, diet and behaviour change. Not that that is simple in effect. And Tier 4 is surgery. So those are the with severe obesity and have a serious health condition. And the evidence base for bariatric surgery at that level is actually quite strong in comparison to other methods. But people won't be able to access that until they have tried other methods of trying to control their weight. So this nice guidance is about what weight management services should be commissioned. And I think this is really important because this is where the funding is going, and this is dictating really what kind of services can be set up. So it's saying to commissioners, they've got to be multi-component: diet, physical activity, behaviour change. They're expected to be multi-professional: dietitians, psychologists, physical activity instructors. They're expected to offer regular, non-discriminatory long-term follow-up. So follow-up that's available to all, but by a trained professional. So it should be long-term follow-up. And this is really key because the evidence base for success in weight management includes long-term follow-up. And a lot of services historically have not provided anything that is adequate to meet that need. So the focus is on the long term. We're not looking at quick fix, we're looking at long-term lifestyle change and trying to prevent future weight gain. So even if we manage to keep people's weight stable, bear in mind the trajectory for most people in adulthood is up. If we can stop them gaining more weight, that is actually an achievement. If they can lose weight, maintain that, that's what we're really aiming for in the long term. So we're expecting that those services will consider goal setting, they'll support people to solve problems, help them to understand how to undertake particular tasks. So that might include budgeting, food provision, cooking, physical activity, how to actually do different things. Social support is a major part of that too. And from a public health perspective, we need to be looking at changing the environment, making physical activity more accessible, making healthy food more accessible. There is quite a strong evidence base for self-monitoring, not just of the weight itself, but of other behaviours that can affect weight. So it might be that people are monitoring how often they have fatty foods in comparison to what they were doing last time, or how often they're achieving the 5 a day. So there's a whole range of things that people could be looking at. It all should be relating to the goals that they've set. So not just weight, that's really important. Have people taken on healthier behaviours that hopefully will make a difference to their health overall, not just their weight. So looking further at what they're recommending with these weight management services, they should last for at least 3 months, with sessions offered at least weekly or fortnightly, with weigh-in at each session. That kind of goes against the health at every size type idea because of them having weigh-in. But it's a real difficult balance here because services have to evaluate their effectiveness and they have to have outcomes. And those outcomes need to be clinical as well as behavioural change. So that's quite a difficult one. But the other thing, think about, how long is 3 months? The amount of weight that some people need to lose, is that 3 months going to be long enough? And there's a huge evidence base when you look at services that have run for 3 months and people lose weight in that 3 months, but without this ongoing support, that weight tends to creep back. So a minimum of 3 months, but a lot of services do only offer that, and that makes it more difficult for people to maintain the weight loss. Achievable goals need to be set for different time periods. So over the first few weeks to the end of the programme, a year, for example. And there should be discussions about reducing sedentary behaviour and introducing physical activity into daily life. And there's two different points there, because sedentary behaviour is something we need to try and avoid, and physical activity we need to include and increase. But sedentary behaviour, so people could be really active, go out and do, an hour's walk, and then not move the rest of the day. But that sedentary behaviour is actually really unhealthy. So we want to decrease sedentary behaviour, get people moving more regularly throughout the day, as well as integrating more activities. So specific dietary targets are agreed. That's obviously with the goal of decreasing energy intake, very much tailored to individual needs. Again, the evidence base suggests individualisation is really important. So we'll be looking at that a bit further in the session. And ideally not saying particular foods or food groups should be avoided, because that tends to make people want them more. So we have to be really careful that we're not promoting a kind of deprivation type feel, because that actually makes people crave things more. Lastly on this document, physical activity sessions. Some of you may be very active and think, well, you don't need teaching to do these things, but people do. They need to know what they can comfortably do. They need to build up their physical activity gradually. A lot of people are not comfortable in gyms. It's not the only way to do it. But if they're going to use a gym, then they obviously need to be shown how to do it. So we need to think broadly about what type of physical activity people might like to do. So all of these programs need to be tailored. There may need to be men only or women only sessions, ranges of times, venues, that kind of thing. They do suggest that weight is monitored and indicators of behaviour change and goals are monitored. So it might be that the goal is more about physical activity this week, or it's more about increasing fruit and vegetables, for example. And something I'm going to come back to in a moment or two is about adopting respectful, non-judgmental approach. Most people with overweight have been treated badly at different times, through stigmatization, through people making assumptions about them because they are overweight. And that includes healthcare professionals. It also includes dietitians. So we need to be really mindful that we are respecting people as individuals and not making judgments on them because of their weight. Another document that's much more recent, which you might be well advised to at least look at the executive summary of, is Tackling Obesity, Empowering Adults and Children to Live Healthier Lives. So there's some key plans that the government came up with for this. More tools to support people who are overweight and obese. expansion of weight management services. Hurrah, we've been needing that for a long time. They're looking at the traffic light system on foods to try and make sure that the information on packaged foods is helpful to people, help them to make them decide what to eat, what not to eat. More calorie labels on foods in restaurants, cafes and takeaways. And if you go into a lot of cafes now, you will see that type of information so that you can decide whether you're going to go for the blueberry muffin or the double chocolate chip muffin, because you'll know which one's most energy dense, that's got the most calories in it. Neither probably is a better decision, but it enables people to make an informed decision. And sometimes when you see those kind of calorie values, which are huge on some of the coffee shops, when you look at those cakes and things, it might make people think, actually, no, not today. Not just You just become more aware of the calorie values in different things. So something that might just seem one small thing can actually be quite calorie dense. So those things can really help people. Consultation on calorie labels on alcohol. Alcohol is one of those things that people don't realise how calorific it is. And legislation to end promotion on high fat, high sugar or salt foods, which again would be a really helpful thing to not be promoting foods that are unhealthy to people. And then banning advertising before 9 p.m. Bearing in mind the number of overweight adults we have, I wonder whether 9 p.m. makes any difference whatsoever, but there we are. The BDA specialist group on obesity looked at that document and have suggested that there are serious gaps. So it's not a meet-all, get everything done type document. It's a restatement of some things that have been on the cards for a long time, and also some things which you should be there are not there. So it's worth looking at it with a critical eye. There's so good things there, but there's also a lot of gaps. And something which is very recent, and I'm really pleased to see, is that the BDA have eventually come up with guidance for eliminating weight stigma. And I would encourage you to have a look at this, but also at Adrian Brown's paper on understanding what type of language people who are overweight are happy with and what they are not happy with. And that's really important that we understand that. So here's just a few of the comments from there, which we need to be making sure that we are incorporating when we are working with people who are overweight. So the first thing is first person language around obesity. So you're not saying an obese person, you are saying a person with obesity or with overweight. But bearing in mind that a lot of people really hate the word obesity and therefore might refer to someone as a person with higher weight. Trying to avoid stigmatizing language and stereotypes, because stereotypes of overweight and obese people are negative on the whole. So it might be that they're lazy or that they overeat all the time, which actually is not necessarily true. It's not as simple as that. We're trying to avoid combative language. So that's talking about a battle going on. So this crisis or the fighting obesity, it kind of almost makes it feel as if you're fighting the people with obesity, which is unhelpful. And using appropriate images. So you can now access images that show people living with obesity as human beings engaging in everyday activities. If you think about it, a lot of the things you will have seen will have been of people with obesity eating a huge burger or a huge ice cream or something that's reinforcing negative stereotypes. So we need to be really careful that the images that we use are not doing that, and that we can convey something of a normal everyday life for people with obesity. And also not using dehumanizing images. So that's things like just showing someone's midriff or something that doesn't show them as a person, as a whole person. Okay, so that's all I want to talk about for that for now, but do have a look at some of this information to make sure you understand it.